अवतारवरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः. So we will be continuing our discussion on Karma Yoga of Swami Vivekananda. Karma is work, yoga is that which joins. So we all work, we have to work in order to survive. But the work we do should be for a higher purpose. And the highest purpose in life is, as we know, realizing the Atman or realizing our true nature or realizing God. We may call it anything we like, it's the same thing. So how to work in that way is taught by this yoga, the yoga of work. So we have had about 4 discussions and today is the 5th part. So it's amazing how much light the great Swami Vivekananda throws on this subject. People generally don't even know that work should also be done in a proper way. Most people are not even slightly aware of this thing. We just go on blindly with our lives. So fortunately, these great souls come to guide us. So today's talk is entitled as the same, which is the chapter in Karma Yoga, that is the secret of work. So at the very beginning of this chapter, Swami Vivekananda first tells us that how to help others, that help can also be done in 3 ways. Generally by help, we just mean that giving food and clothing and all that. But he tells us that is not the only thing in which we can help others, because helping or service is a very integral part of Karma Yoga. So we have to know which is the highest help we can give others and which is also the lowest kind of help. So generally we just recognize by help physical help. So Swami Vivekananda says helping others physically by removing their physical needs is indeed great. But the help is great according as the need is greater and according as the help is far reaching. So 2 things he says. One, what the person needs. If you go to help physically a millionaire, it's of no use to him. And if you even go to a poor person and give him a pittance, just not even sufficient for a meal, that will also is no help at all. So 2 things are there. Give what is needed by others, and the help should be far reaching. So he says if a person's wants can be removed for an hour, it is helping him indeed. If his wants can be removed for a year, it will be more help to him. But the greatest will be if his wants can be removed forever. Naturally, that is the greatest help. So, what is that which can remove our wants forever, which gives us complete self-fulfillment for all time to come? There is only one thing: spiritual knowledge or knowledge of God. So he says that knowledge is the only thing that can destroy our miseries forever. Any other knowledge satisfies our wants only for a time. That if you give poor person a few dollars, maybe he can eat nicely for a few days, but afterwards his hunger will return. Hmm. So all the other helps have to be temporary. The faculty of want can be annihilated only by getting everything. Getting everything means not getting everything in the world, that is not possible. Everything means regaining our infinite nature. So when you have infinity, when you know that you are infinite, what more can you want? That is what spiritual knowledge gives us. But of course, as is the way of the world, nobody really cares. Most of the people, they have hardly any idea, and they simply don't care for spiritual knowledge or understand its true worth. That is the world. We cannot help it, because it is as it is said, only a jeweler can appraise a diamond, and very few people in the world aim high. So eating, sleeping, drinking is all generally we understand. But this does not mean that there is nothing known as spiritual knowledge, and spiritual knowledge cannot be given, not at all. In fact, the person who gives spiritual knowledge to others is the greatest benefactor of mankind. And as such, we find that these people were the most powerful of men who helped man in his spiritual needs. The power which Jesus, Buddha, Ramakrishna, Krishna manifested can never be manifested by those who have become great only in the world, in a worldly way. Whatever Hitler or Stalin they have come and gone. But this power which these people manifest, which Christ manifested more than 2000 years ago, which Buddha manifested still earlier, it is still working. These people still inspire us after so many years and will continue to inspire us. So, what is the reason for this great manifestation of power? Because he says spirituality is the true basis of all our activities in life. A spiritually strong and sound person will be strong in every other respect. He will be sound, strong, even intellectually, mentally, because he is spiritually strong. Because spirituality can only be gained by training the mind. It is the mind, unfit mind, which stands in the way of our realizing our true nature. So only when the mind is trained to perfection can spiritual knowledge be gained. That is why if a person is strong spiritually, it is to be understood that he has undergone all these kinds of training earlier. And because we will know that he has perfect self-control. Self-control is the basis of all higher achievements. Without control over our minds and bodies, nothing higher can be gained. As we all know, even those who work in just the physical sphere, like athletes and all, how much training they undergo just to get their bodies under control, just to train their bodies. Those who have become great scholars, poets, writers, years and years of training of the mind, gaining knowledge. So, self-control is the only basis if we want to aim at anything higher in life. And spiritual persons can only become spiritual after they have gained this self-control. So next to spiritual help comes intellectual help, the gift of secular knowledge. So the gift of knowledge is also a far higher gift than that of food and clothes. It is higher than even giving life to a man. Even if you save a man's life, that is also not as great as giving him the gift of knowledge, because the real life of man consists of knowledge. A completely ignorant man, whether he is alive or dead, hardly makes any difference. So knowledge is life, because life in a dark, groping way through ignorance is no life at all. Even our material prosperity is dependent on knowledge. If a person has to become rich, he should know how to utilize his wealth. He should know not to squander his wealth. For that also knowledge is required. An absolutely ignorant person can't even remain prosperous in the world. So after this spiritual and intellectual help, last of all comes physical help. Food, clothes, etc. Therefore, in considering the question of helping others, we must always strive not to commit the mistake of thinking that physical help is the only help which can be given. It is not only the last but also the least, because it cannot give us permanent satisfaction. So my misery, our miseries can only be removed when our wants are satisfied completely and forever. It is wants which are making us miserable. No? We want this, we want something to survive, to live, shelter, food, clothing, etc. But beyond that also, our wants don't cease. So although we don't realize it in the beginning, but it is these infinite wants which are making us miserable. So what can remove our misery? When the wants are satisfied forever. And that can only be done by spiritual knowledge. Nothing else can make us satisfied forever. Why spiritual knowledge is necessary? Because only by that knowledge our dependence on anything ceases. A spiritual person does not depend on anything. He has no need of his body also. So one of the Sri Ramakrishna's disciples, Swami Vimohananda, he spent his last days in Kashi, Banaras Sevashrama. He was very ill, all kinds of diseases. Diabetes, this, that, he could not even see properly. So in that state also, he was completely cheerful and always smiling. And so he says, what does it matter to me whether my body lives or goes? I know it is nothing. It is born, it will die. So these people have gained something much higher than the body. So nothing in the world can disturb them ever. That is the high state which a truly spiritual person can attain, and that is our goal. So it is obvious that the miseries of the world cannot be cured by physical help only. Unless we aim seriously for something higher, these physical needs will keep on arising and we will continue to be miserable. So what is the solution? The solution is to gain that spiritual knowledge. And the only means of gaining that is making mankind pure. Swami Vivekananda says. It is the impurity in our mind which is the only thing which stands between us and God. That is the only thing, nothing else. The obstacles are all in the mind, nothing is outside. So Swami Vivekananda says the only way is to make our minds, ourselves pure. So that's what is purity. That's a very big subject. So I will just quote a few lines from a great saint of the Christian world, Saint John of the Cross. Most probably you have heard of him. So he says purity is gained when? Purity is gained when the soul goes forth as regards its affection and operation. It goes away from all created things. Everything, the whole of creation. When the mind goes away from that and when it journeys to eternal things. There is only one thing eternal, that is God. So when the mind loses its attraction for the world and journeys towards God, which is the only source of happiness and good fortune, then only the mind starts becoming pure. Then he explains the reason. Again I quote, the reason for which it is necessary for the soul, in order to attain divine union with God, to pass through this mortification of the denial of pleasures in all created things is because all the affections which it has for creatures are pure darkness in the eyes of God. And when a person is attached to these things, to these pleasures, that person has no capacity for being enlightened and possessed by the pure and simple light of God. Because light cannot agree with darkness. This is what he says. So all our worldly hankerings are just darkness, and God is the light. So if we want the light, we have to get rid of darkness. Simple as that. So this lack of knowledge of our true nature or lack of knowledge of God, this ignorance is, Swami Vivekananda says, the mother of all the evil and all the misery we see in this world. Let men have light. Let them be pure and spiritually and strong and educated. Then alone will misery cease in the world, not before. We may convert every house in the country into a charity asylum. We may fill the whole world with hospitals. But our misery will continue to exist until our character changes. This is the thing. So what does Karma Yoga say? Karma Yoga says that this purity and removal of ignorance can only be gained through work. It will never come if we sit idle. But not every kind of work will make us gain this purity. Going headlong in search of worldly things, it can never lead us to spiritual knowledge. So he says, we read in the Bhagavad Gita again and again that we must work incessantly. We cannot stop work till we are alive. Even breathing is work. All work is by nature composed of good and evil. We cannot do any work which will not do some good somewhere. There cannot be any work which will not cause some harm somewhere. It is impossible because the world is made up of like that. When we get some job, we are depriving someone else of the job. Each morsel we put in our mouths is taken from somebody else's mouth. That is the way of the world. We cannot avoid it. So every work must necessarily be a mixture of good and evil. Yet we are commanded to work. Good and evil both will have the result. They will produce their effects. Good action will have good effects, bad action bad. Both good and bad are bondages of the soul. So what should be done? We cannot stop work. It is impossible. And every work we do will have good as well as bad effects. So, what is the solution? How to get rid of this cycle? So, Swami Vivekananda says the solution reached in the Gita in regard to this bondage producing nature of action. How does work produce bondage? We have already gone through, but again we should know. When we work in order to gain something, we start this cycle. We will gain that thing. That is a kind of effect. When we want something, there will be work associated with that. I want a laptop. I am working for a laptop, suppose. When I get that laptop, I will start my work on that. That will also be gained. Well, that will also be to gain something, maybe to make money or make myself popular or something like that. So each selfish work is leading to another kind of work. So each karma is giving rise to another type of karma. And till selfishness does not cease, this eternal cycle of karma can never cease, not even with death. Because our desires will make us assume another body. If I want to have chocolate ice cream, I need a body. I cannot enjoy it without that. So similarly, whatever we want to have in the world, we want to enjoy, there has to be a medium. That medium is what? Our body and senses. So this is how selfish work creates bondage. So what is the solution? Swami Vivekananda tells us, the solution reached in the Gita in regard to this bondage producing nature of work is that what? Solution cannot be stop work, because we cannot stop work till we are ignorant. So what is the solution? Solution is, Gita says, work does not produce bondage. It is our desire to get something out of that work that is producing bondage. That is called attachment to our work. So that attachment is creating bondage. If that attachment is got rid of, work cannot bind the soul. Not only that, if we do such unselfish work, it will release us from the bondage. Because any good work, any unselfish work, which reduces the power of selfishness. So slowly, by doing unselfish work, slowly and slowly we will get rid of those sanskaras in their mind which are goading us to selfish action. That is in every sphere. So I have diabetes, I have been told by the doctor not to eat too many sweets, but I have been eating sweets all my life. So my mind is naturally gravitated towards sweets. So what is the solution? The solution is not keeping on eating sweets. The solution is telling the mind again and again that it is not healthy for me to eat sweets. So what will happen? First we deny ourselves. The first day it is very difficult because the mind is going against its inclinations. But the second day will be easier. The third day will be more easier. Because that denial now has also become a part of our sanskara or the impressions of the mind. So here also, the desire for selfish actions will slowly be reduced by doing unselfish actions. So this is the one central idea in the Gita. Swami Vivekananda says, don't stop work. Not only that, Gita actually makes us work. But it says, work incessantly, but do not be attached to this work. So now Swami Vivekananda says, let us understand what is meant by non-attachment to work. So now he will tell us. So the first thing is, we should know that the goal of each and every yoga, whether it be Jnana Yoga, the yoga of discrimination, whether it be the yoga of devotion, Bhakti Yoga, whether it be the yoga of reasoning or devotion or karma or meditation, each of the yogas has only one aim, that is freedom. The soul seems to have lost its freedom. I say seems to have because the soul can never really lose its freedom. And this ignorance that we are not free is to be removed by the help of any of these yogas. So the goal is only one, liberation, or which Sri Ramakrishna describes as God realization. And liberation means what? Freedom. Freedom means what? Freedom from the bondage not only of evil, but even from the bondage of good. Finally, this is the final stage. A golden chain, he says, is as much a chain as an iron one. So finally, good and bad both have to be got rid of. But that is far away. Let us not think about that. For us who are in a very low state, first of all, our goal should be to get rid of our bad tendencies. Now he explains this whole science, what we call impressions or tendencies of the mind. So this we have to understand before we go further. This impressions of the mind, in Sanskrit it is called sanskara. Each work we do, each thought we think makes an impression of the mind. As if there is a slate and we make a line on that slate. So sanskara, he says, can be translated as inherent tendency. And he gives us a simile, Swamiji. What does he say? Imagine there is a lake. Each mind is a lake. So ripples are created in the lake. What happens? When we throw a stone, there is a ripple. So the stone goes inside, but the ripples continues for some time. So he says every ripple, every wave that rises in the mind, when it subsides, does not die out. It leaves a mark. Someone I met, he told me, my name is John. I came home, for the time being I forgot. But when I met him again, I remembered that his name is John. How? If the impression which had been created by his telling me, I am John, if it had gone away completely, there would be nothing known as memory. But the very fact that I can remember his name shows that when I heard him saying, my name is John, it created a ripple in the mind. But that ripple, although it died out for the time being, it was not completely eradicated. It was there. So each ripple leaves a mark and a future possibility of that ripple being created again. So that ripple will be created again. There is a possibility. How often it will be created depends upon some factors. We will see that. So this mark with the possibility of the wave reappearing is what is called sanskara. This we should remember, very important. Every work that we do, every movement of the body, every thought we think leaves such an impression on the mind. And even when such impressions are not obvious on the surface, they are sufficiently strong to work beneath the surface in our subconscious mind. So, what we are every moment is determined by the sum total of all these impressions, sum total resultant action. So, suppose someone keeps doing bad things for 10 years and suddenly decides to change over a new leaf and starts doing good for 2 days, then he thinks I have become a saint. No, it cannot be. Because his character will be determined by the sum total, not by 1 or 2 days of his actions. So, what we are every moment is determined by the sum total of these impressions on the mind. What I am just at this moment is the effect of the sum total of all the impressions which I have gathered in my life. If the sum total is good, my character becomes good. If bad, it becomes bad. Simple. If a man continuously hears bad words, thinks bad thoughts, does bad actions, his mind will be full of bad impressions. And these impressions will influence him to do more bad things. So, after a while, what will happen? In spite of himself, he will become a bad person because those impressions have become so powerful that he just becomes a tool in their hands. So the sum total of those impressions in him will create a strong motive power for doing bad actions, and finally he will just be like a machine in the hands of those impressions. They will force him in spite of himself to do evil. Similarly, if a man does good actions, hears good things, the sum total of those impressions will be good. And if he continues that, in spite of himself, he will not be able to do a bad action. That is our aim. So, we are under the control of our impressions, which we have made earlier. So, these impressions, the sum total of these impressions are what is called the character of man. This is the thing. So, what is the need of creating good impressions? Swami Vivekananda says, first of all, the aim is to get rid of both good and evil, go beyond both. But first of all, we should know how to remove our bad tendencies, counteract our bad tendencies by good ones. Why? Swami Vivekananda says here, he gives the answer. By continuous reflex of good thoughts, good impressions moving over the surface of the mind, the tendency of doing good becomes strong. And the result is that we gain self-control. See, in the beginning, what happens? Our minds are continuously going towards selfish actions. We check the mind and say, no, now you have to be unselfish. Mind is telling, go to a restaurant, spend a few $100s in eating some things which will give you diabetes. So the mind says, no, what I have planned to spend in that restaurant, I will give to charity. So what happens? Actually, with each unselfish action, we are practicing self-control. So all good work is leading to self-control. And slowly, when it has become sufficiently strong, it gives us great control over our organs. Then after 1 year, 2 years, we won't have to fight with ourselves in order to stop going to an expensive restaurant. It will become nature. We won't even think about it after a few years. This is the secret. So he says we have to work persistently till only good has a place in our minds and evil almost completely disappears. It cannot disappear completely, so he says it is at least subdued and held in control in a corner of the mind. There it cannot do any harm. So vicious dog is there, you just tie him in a corner. So the dog may be there, but he won't do any harm to you because he's safely tied up. He's within your control. But if you let him loose, then there will be hell to pay. So here also, when the good tendencies are so much, they have accumulated to such a great degree that the bad tendencies have become practically ineffective. So that we have gained control over that. Even if they remain, they cannot do us any harm. So when that state is reached, we will gain self-control to a great extent. So this self-discipline, this self-control will lead us to non-attachment. Being non-attached is a manifestation of great power, mind you. We forget this thing. To be attached is very easy because our nature is prompting us. You open a television, it will tell you if you don't have the latest iPhone, your life is not worth 2 cents. If you lose this deal, fantastic deal, you better commit suicide. So this is what every moment this is going on in our mind. Go to Las Vegas, go to Hawaii, otherwise you are finished. You are nobody. You cannot show your face to your friends. So this is prompting us day and night. The power lies where? In checking this, in using our discrimination. But no, these are worthless. What is the use of caring about the opinion of others? They will praise me today, and tomorrow itself I may be the worst person in the world for them. So when we use our reasoning in this way, we manifest power. That is the power of self-control. I will be satisfied with what I have. Let people praise me, blame me, I don't care. So this is a manifestation of power. And power is gained slowly. It is gained by self-control only. Self-control, practicing self-control will give rise to power. That power will again help us to gain control ourselves. That is how it works. So this we should remember. So to become unattached, first we have to accumulate that power by practicing self-control at every step. Then what is our aim after that? He says work then, but not let the action or the thought produce a deep impression on the mind. So we have said, no, Swami Vivekananda says, what is this non-attachment? This non-attachment is what? Now he explains it. He has explained what is impression, what is sanskara. Many types of sanskaras can be there. So when the sanskaras become too deep, that sanskara has the chance to reappear very often. He explains this. See how wonderfully he explains. He says, we see that the impression of any action to which we become attached that impression becomes very deep. That is the secret. So I may meet hundreds of persons during the day, and among them meet also one whom I love. But when I go to sleep at night, amongst all those faces, I will only remember the face of my friend. Perhaps I had met him for only 1 minute. But that will remain. Why? Because my attachment to that particular person causes a deeper impression on the mind than all other faces could do. So physiologically, the impressions have all been the same. All the impressions have come through the retina, gone to our brain, we have registered. Many faces might be absolutely new faces. So I never think about them again. But that one face, maybe I got only a glimpse of that person. My friend was going somewhere, I just saw him from a distance. That will create a deep impression. Why? Because we have been attached to that person. So when I see him that time, it will recreate, it will cause all the impressions, older impressions to come to the surface. I had met him maybe 100 times before, so all those will come to the surface. So this is what is happening. Means when you get attached to something, it will create a very deep impression. That deep impression is the cause for that sanskara to appear again. So when I go to a restaurant, maybe I eat 5 kinds of dishes, but there is one which I like particularly. Then what happens? That sanskara is created. It is a deep impression. Now when I go home, after some days I cannot sit still. I have to go to that restaurant and eat the same thing again. Why? Because I have become attached to that thing. So I will go and eat again. What will that do? It won't get rid of the problem. It will make it further deeper. So I will go again and again and get into this cycle. So for small things it does not matter, but for serious things it becomes a serious problem. Like smoking and all that, we all know. So men become slave to that, and although these things ruin their health, ruin their mental state, they cannot get rid of it. Because why? This sanskara has become extremely deep. After it has become sufficiently deep, we cannot get rid of that. But if we are on the alert at the very beginning through discipline, then we will not let any sanskara become deep. We will not let anything in the world, either it be a human being or any material thing, we will not let it create a strong impression in the mind. Means we will not become attached to it. But again, this can only come through long practice, not in a day. Slowly through self-control, practiced at every stage of life. So we should know that although Karma Yoga does not tell us to meditate and does not tell us to practice austerity or in so many words, but behind that is the same spirit. There is no free lunch. Yeah. So any kind of these impressions have to be avoided, but of course, in the beginning, we have to take the help of good impressions. We have to get attached to good places, to good persons, to saintly persons. So these, what will happen? These will make the sanskaras of worldly sanskaras, this will make very weak in the long run. If you go on visiting good places, go on hearing things, then those things will become weak of themselves. That is the natural way to gain intellectual pleasure. Is a natural way of getting rid of hankering of physical pleasure. It is the most natural way. You read the life of any great achiever, even in the intellectual plane, great poets, great writers, great musicians, you will see that they had not much hankering for physical things. their love for that pleasure, higher pleasure, automatically withdrew their mind from lower things. They did not have to make a special effort. All those who have advanced in any art, singing, painting, or whatever it is, or in deep studies, philosophers, they know they rise naturally above this. That is the best way to do that. And without any undue hardship, we can do that. So, aim higher. That is the main thing in the beginning. Aim higher than all this eating, drinking, and sleeping. So, the higher pursuits will automatically draw our mind from the lower things. And finally, when we keep on doing this, we will be in a fit state to understand spiritual things. It is not easy to understand spiritual things. A mind which is addicted to these physical pleasures can never even dream of attaining true spirituality, out of the question. So slowly we have to progress in this way. And finally, we have to become completely unattached. What is that final state is reached when? Let things work, let the brain centers work, let the body work, but let not even a ripple, means not even one sanskara, not let it conquer your mind. You be free. These desires, which we think are a freedom of our expression of our freedom, they are an expression of our slavery, not freedom. If we were really free, we could immediately give them up whenever we like. But the very fact that we cannot give them up shows that we have become slaves. So being unattached means ceasing to be a slave. So work incessantly, but do not bind yourself. Bondage is terrible. Then he tells us various ways, which we will discuss the next time, because today there is not sufficient time. So the whole gist of Karma Yoga, he says, is that we should work like a master and not as a slave. Previously, when we had been discussing duty in this, when we were discussing Karma Yoga, we had discussed duty. So Swami Vivekananda says, duty is like the midday sun scorching the soul. Why? Because duty ceases to be any joy, it becomes a bondage. We become slaves to our duty. So explaining this, he says, do you not see how everybody works? Nobody can be at rest. 99% of mankind work like slaves. And the result is what? The result is a big headache when we get home. We start fighting, quarreling, we are irritated. Why? Because there is no joy in the life. So he says, work through freedom, work through love. Then he explains, the word love is very difficult to understand. Any other base emotion, we give the name of love. Any sort of attachment, it is love. So he says, love never comes until there is freedom. There is no true love possible in the slave. If you buy a slave, previously, slaves used to be purchased. So he says, if you buy a slave and tie him down in chains and make him work for you, he will work like a drudge, but there will be no love in him for you. Like in poor countries, what is happening? In India also. Mass scale exploitation of the poor people. Labor is cheap, get someone to work for you, give him just enough to survive, take advantage. So will that person have any love for you? He'll be working like a slave. So he'll have no joy in his life because his work is not giving him pleasure. So when we work for the things of the world as slaves, which nearly all of us are doing, there can be no love in us. And our work then is not true work. It is just slavery. So this is true, he says, for work done for ourselves, for our selfish motives, and work done for those to whom we are attached. We become attached to our wives, our kids, our friends, etc. So if we work just because we are attached to them and want to give them only good things and not to others, then it is a slave's work. Because in them is reflected our own self. That is the thing. So, selfish work is slave's work. And what is the test? He says this is the test. How do we know whether we are doing, is it really good work or it is slavery? He says this is the test. Every act of true love brings happiness. There is no act of love, if it is true love, there is no act of love which does not bring peace and blessedness as its reaction. So real existence, real knowledge and real love are eternally connected. So our supreme reality, God or Brahman, is described as what? It is described as ultimate Sat, ultimate existence, ultimate Chit, ultimate knowledge, and ultimate Ananda, ultimate bliss. So he says this bliss and true love are one and the same thing. When that bliss of Brahman or God becomes relative, we see it as the world. Then it as all the love in the world. When that knowledge becomes modified into the knowledge of the things of the world, that bliss and that bliss form the foundation of all true love known to man. That is the thing. So, Satchitananda we can only experience in the pure state when we experience that. But currently, they have become the world, as it were, modified into the world. They have become relative. So he says, when that Ananda becomes relative, we see it, that is the foundation, that Ananda is the foundation of all true love known to the heart of man. So with that love, there is no painful reaction. Because true love can only bring a reaction of bliss. If it does not, it is not love. It is mistaking something else for love. It is mistaking selfishness and attachment for love. So he says, when we have succeeded in loving our husbands, wives, children, the whole world and the whole universe in such a manner that there is no reaction of pain or jealousy, no selfish feeling, then we should know that our love is true love. It is not simply attachment. So this is the test. So he just quotes Shri Krishna, what he says, Krishna says in the Gita. He tells Arjuna, look at me, Arjuna. I am continuously working. Because if I stop work for one moment, the whole universe will die. But I have nothing to gain from work, God says. Why should I work then? Why? Because I love the world. So God, because He loves us truly, because He loves the world, He is unattached. And that love makes Him unattached. Wherever there is attachment, the clinging to the things of the world, we must know that it is all physical attraction between sets of particles of matter. It's all on the material level. Something that attracts two bodies nearer and nearer all the time. And if they cannot get near enough, it produces pain. But when there is real love, it does not rest on physical attachment at all. There is nothing physical about that. The love which the gopis had for Krishna, they got rid of their body consciousness. They were not even aware that they were human beings. So such lovers may be 1,000 miles away from one another, but that spiritual love of theirs will be the same. It will never die, and it will never produce any painful reaction. So this is the goal, this unattachment, reaching that unattachment, but it is extremely difficult. He says it is almost a life work. But when we attain that, we will immediately gain knowledge of our true nature. We will gain the ultimate object of our life. So naturally that cannot be very easy. So next we will take up when we discuss things. He does not only stop here, he gives us practical hints. This is what we are supposed to do. Now how to go about it. So he will tell us various ways in which we can do this, depending upon our own aptitudes. So that will teach us, at least give us hints about how to become unattached. So let us stop here for today. Before you become completely unattached to this place and to this talk, so we better stop here. Yeah. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Shri